Hi everyone! Well, we have had a rather adventurous and somewhat educational week.
We were camping out on some of our favorite BLM land in Colorado, enjoying the beautiful scenery of our new COVID office.
Well, after being there for a couple of weeks, everyone's worst nightmare happened. We were laying in bed and a little mouse scurried across the bed all the way from my feet to my head and then went back down under the bed. We couldn't do anything that night, but the next day we ran to the store and bought a bunch of traps.
Now, there's a lot of different types of mouse traps out there. Standard snap traps, electric traps, catch and release live traps, and sticky glue traps, among others. It's a little bit hard to decide what to choose, so we went with a couple of plastic snap traps as well as a few of the classic wooden snap traps. Ultimately, we found that the most powerful and effective option was the classic Victor wooden snap trap baited with peanut butter.
Regarding sprays, you may have heard that peppermint and cinnamon oils are rodent deterrents. We happen to have some Grandpa Gus's potent rodent repellent, which we used, but I will say that although this is a nice all-natural option, the mice were determined enough that they still made it in. So we later went out and bought the Tomcat rodent repellent, which also has peppermint and cinnamon, but it also has sodium lauryl sulfate, which maybe isn't as natural, but I think it worked a little bit better. Gotta do what you gotta do.
If you have trouble pronouncing it, you know it's good. And over the next 3 days, we proceeded to catch 21 mice, 19 with traps and 2 with my gloved hands.
And after those 3 sleepless nights, I decided it was time for an intervention, and thus the rodent proofing began.
The first step to mouse proofing your camper is cleaning. If you know you have a mouse problem or even suspect it, the first thing you want to do is clean. And I'm talking about a deep clean and disinfecting.
We removed every single belonging from our camper. Keep in mind there may be some panels you have to remove to get to some of those hard to reach places. In our Tab 400, we removed the panel under the large fridge, the panel under the bathroom door, made sure to get under the bed, in all the cabinets, and also removed the panel under the passenger side dining seat.
We cleaned the camper in a top-to-bottom fashion. We used Mr. Clean Clean Freak, Clorox bleach disinfecting spray, magic erasers on the walls and ceiling, and used a rodent repellent spray later on in the process.
After it was clean, next up was sealing every nook and cranny to keep those critters out. We're going to show you in our Tab 400 the areas that we found to seal up, but whether you have a tag, a Tab 320, or any trailer for that matter, the process is going to be similar.
Our main goal is to keep critters out of 2 main access points into the camper. First, the very bottom of the camper to keep them from getting up into the underbelly. And second, any gaps between the frame and the indoor cabin floor that gives them access into the main cabin. Starting on the outside of your camper, get underneath and look around at all sides of the camper. Locate every single hole, seam, or gap. Mice are freaky little contortionists, so keep in mind that they can fit into some pretty small spaces.
In our Tab 400, we located several spots that needed attention. There are 2 large holes on each side of the frame, one behind the tire where the brake cable is and one just in front of the tire. There's a hole where the fresh water drain comes out, a hole above where each front stabilizer mounts to the frame. Some of the gaps between the screws holding on the corrugated plastic on the underbelly of the camper were beginning to sag, and luckily the AC vent already had metal mesh on it. We had 2 methods for covering these spaces. We bought some metal gutter guard at the hardware store that we used to cover the larger holes, and then we used a foam filler spray that was already mixed with mouse repellent to cover some of the smaller gaps and fill in some of the edges.
The gutter guard was great for covering the larger holes on the frame. First, we cut the pieces to size and then thoroughly cleaned off the frame. It would be ideal if you could screw this directly into place, however we didn't have the tools or hardware for that, and also realized it would be nearly impossible to do without taking off the tire. Our solution was a tube of Contractor's Gorilla Glue that we applied with a caulking gun. We used duct tape to hold the wire in place while we glued the corners. After those corners dried, we followed it up with a heavy application of glue around all edges. Honestly, it's a bit of a sloppy job and doesn't look great, but I don't think those gutter guards are going anywhere.
But since the glue dried white, we simply gave it a quick spray of black spray paint and it blended right in. We used the same process for the hole behind the tire, but it was a little trickier because of its location and to accommodate for the brake cable. We cut a small notch for the cable to go through. To ensure the cable wouldn't rub, we used duct tape on the rough edges of the wire and also electrical tape and the foam spray around the wire itself. We did the same for the 2 holes above the front stabilizers, as those were pretty big, cutting and gluing the gutter guard and then following it up with the foam spray.
The great thing about spray foam is it will fill small or large gaps, it dries really hard, and the one that we used is specifically designed to keep mice out. However, it could be a little bit messy to apply, so be sure to practice first. And it sucks to get off your hands.
So bad.
So wear gloves.
I think I'm still picking it off my fingers.
Safety third. With the spray foam, we filled the hole by the freshwater drain valve and all of the gaps that had began to sag in the underbelly covering.
Now, let's say a little critter does manage to get up into the underbelly of your camper. Our second line of defense is to close up all gaps that actually enter into the cabin of the camper. These gaps will differ in the different floor plans and year models of the tags and tabs, so the important thing is to do a full inspection, unscrewing some panels here and there, looking in all those nooks and crannies you never look in, and look for anything that looks like it might be a hole that goes down through the floor of your camper. In our 2020 Tab 400, we identified a few worry spots. First, the hole under the 3-way refrigerator by the water pump. There was a hole under the bathroom floor for the drain, and a hole under the bed by the AC.
The biggest hole was the one by the water pump. It's where the freshwater fill line exits the camper, and it was our biggest suspicion for where the mice were coming in. So we sealed this major hole with spray foam and also covered it with a little piece of gutter guard. But we also covered the other 2 major holes, the one beneath the bathroom and the one beneath the bed by the air conditioner, just to be safe.
After our experience rodent proofing, we were inundated with suggestions on how to keep mice out and how to deter mice, and so I thought that I would go ahead and share some of these suggestions with you. First, I had so many people talk about ways to deter rodents. First of all being the peppermint and cinnamon oils, because they're nice and natural, and I've already talked about the Grandpa Gus's potent rodent repellent, but also the Tomcat rodent repellent seemed to me to be a little bit more effective. A lot of people also talk about using dryer sheets or Irish Spring, but that also seems to be a little bit of a wives' tale. I will tell you, I haven't tried it, but I've also seen chewed up Irish Spring by mice. Another deterrent is an ultrasonic deterrent, which we saw at the store and we were tempted to buy, but we didn't go for it because we're already trying to manage all kinds of power in our tiny trailer. And finally, our friend just brought us Fresh Cab Botanical Rodent Repellent. I haven't tried this yet, but I mean, it can't hurt, so.
It smells kind of like a hippie.
It does. It smells like a hippie.
For sealing existing gaps, we highly recommend DAP Touch and Foam Mouth Shield. That's the spray foam that we used all around our camper and it seemed to work really well. You can also use steel or brass wool. There's a little bit of caution to be had there because steel and brass wool should be pretty flammable. The benefit of brass wool over steel wool is brass wool is less likely to rust. Other
than that, our only suggestion is to keep a large cat, or 10, or like a lion or tiger or something. Well, I always say, don't waste a good mistake by not learning from it. So, we hope that you've picked up a tip or two from our ordeal this week. And as always, we will write all of the tips with links to the products in the blog in the description below. And we really appreciate you shopping through our links so that we can keep telling you how we mess up in life. So, here's to mouse-free camping. Love and light. After our experience, Rodent.
Damn those rodents. While I'm making fun of you, I'm thinking of you.
You're so sweet.